You want to get started?
I thought you were going to throw something out there.
No. I'm sitting here. I had a long debate with myself on the drive up to the studio about whether I actually want to show up or not. And if I do start breaking out in hives, just tell me, because I might. Fair. I feel like an allergic reaction coming on.
Okay, well.
Got an EpiPen around? Or?
I'm not allergic to anything. No food allergies, not really any seasonal allergies, no allergies to medication, just allergies to gold and black.
Well, coincidentally, Dave has no problem accepting donations from anyone. So
sure.
If we want to write a check to the Boilermaker Alliance, he'd happily accept it and cash it.
24/7. Just say the word.
I will tell you this. So you, on the Summits podcast side, we did an episode with the women's basketball coach, and she's awesome.
From Purdue, Katie Gerald.
Katie.
Yeah. Yep.
Katie's awesome, very personable. We chatted a little bit on the front end, had a little IU Purdue banter. It was fun. Good episode. Chatted for a little while after the episode filmed. Cool chick, very good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she was Miss Indiana. I think my class 03 from Beech Grove, and then obviously had a great career at Purdue, and now is back as the head coach. Yeah, I think she's entering her 4th season.
Okay.
Getting it going up there. So
yeah. Well, she certainly has had the talent herself, and I think she's got the talent, building that talent around on the roster. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And with IU having a pretty strong program right now, if they can both continue to elevate, that'd be just a nice.
Oh yeah, it's great for the state. Yeah, it's crazy seeing these. Ryan Walters, our football coach, both under 40. These young head coaches that are now kind of. I think there's a reason why the Sabins and those types of people are getting out of college athletics at this time. I'm sure we'll get into it here in a bit. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Well, someone has to finish second.
True. Are we talking about basketball or football? Football we might not want to talk about because most schools haven't.
I don't understand how IU football has 8 home games and only 4 road games. Somebody has yet to explain that to me this season.
I don't know that I've really paid attention.
Whatever it takes.
I mean, we're 6-6, like most respectable schools, but Purdue. But
yeah. We need all the advantages we can get.
No, man, Coach Sig, he's got it. 77 points. 70. I mean, even when I was at IU, Antoine Randall, Mr. Magic Man was there. And we couldn't even put up 77 points. Now we'd put up like 50 some odd a game. The problem is we were giving up 77 points.
What directional school was it though? I mean, Western Illinois.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay.
Doesn't matter. There's no style points.
It's an online
just
school.
a scoreboard.
Okay.
Yeah. University of Phoenix.
I get both arguments. This Saturday will be the test. So we're in the Rose Bowl, which never thought I'd say about IU, but they're playing UCLA in the Rose Bowl. So like a legit team. I know UCLA is apparently having a down year, but now we'll see. What
first time
we
since
have.
67, 68?
Something like that, yeah.
When they were actually in the Rose Bowl,
right?
I wasn't born yet. Vince may have been born, but I wasn't born yet.
Right. Yeah, I think I was a teenager then.
Probably.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Industrious Podcast. Thank all of you guys for joining us on this episode. We greatly appreciate it from wherever you get your podcasts or if you're tuning in on the Assessa YouTube channel. Thank you for doing so. All right, this is going to be a fun episode. You got 2 Hoosiers on this side of the fence, as you guys know, and now a Boilermaker. Well, a Cardinal / Boilermaker on the other side of the fence. We'll get into that.
It's actually a table. There's no fence
table.
here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I stand corrected. Anyway, our guest today is Mr. Dave Neff, the CEO of the Boilermaker Alliance. Dave, welcome to the Industrious Podcast.
Hey, it's good to be on with you guys. I'm just meeting Joe, but Vince, you and I have known each other now a couple of years. So I appreciate being on.
Well, we're glad to have you. Why don't you introduce yourself and kind of ultimately roll into what you're doing now?
Yeah. I'm a lifelong Hoosier in terms of where I was born. Grew up here in Indianapolis, Heritage Christian grad, and then matriculated to Ball State. And believe it or not, had a great 4 years up in Muncie, and ended up went as a telecommunications major, thinking I wanted to work for ESPN. Ended up pivoting into sports administration, and got my first break after college working for Pacers Sports Entertainment. So that was nearly 20 years ago now, but working at the Pacers first 4 years out of school was a tremendous experience. I still tell people all roads sort of lead back to the Pacers in terms of, as I think about relationships and opportunities that have come my way, you know, being able to kind of work for an organization that brings the community together, and you got to meet so many different business and civic leaders. It was really special. I then left there and went to go work for Exact Target, which was still a privately held company at that time, 2011, and it was a short ride, just under 3 years for me personally, but got to experience when we IPO'd and then when Salesforce bought us, and then I left about 6 months later as our global sports marketing manager. And then from there, had an opportunity to really co-found something with a mentor of mine, an organization called Edge Mentoring, which we can certainly talk about later. But the CEO of Elanco, Jeff Simmons, was somebody I met during my Pacer days, and had an opportunity at 29 to kind of take a bit of a leap of faith. I mean, I really believed in Jeff and believed in what the organization was about, but we really kind of had to go from 0 to 1 in a lot of ways to build that thing. And so that was a great ride. Did that almost 6 years, and I guess on the personal front, a lot was happening during this time. I got married. My wife and I had our first 2 kids while I was at Edge. Now we have 4. So we're 8, 6, 4, 2 currently. So busy household. three sons and a daughter. My daughter's 6-year-old. Can do no wrong. The boys do lots of wrong. Now there's just a lot of energy at these ages. But
just wait.
Yeah,
it'll flip flop.
That's what I hear. So. But then to kind of bring things up to current day, in 2019, right before COVID, decided to transition out of Edge. You know, it was a great 6 years, very fulfilling. You know, you don't go co-found a nonprofit, as you know, Vince, just to make money or get rich. Right. But it was very fulfilling. Wanted to get a successor in place at Edge so that I could, you know, transition back into the private sector for a period with a growing family. And so worked for a consulting firm as our chief revenue officer. It's called Prolific. It's in downtown Indy. We also still have a marketing advertising agency, JDA Worldwide. And then about a year ago, I got contacted by an executive recruiter in Indy who I happen to know about this opportunity. And I think the text was something like, any interest in managing Purdue's NIL? And so, of course, as a sports fan, I've been tracking NIL. Can't say I was, you know, chomping at the bit to go work in it, but I do think incredibly highly of the Purdue brand, what happened, you know, under the Daniels decade and now Mung, and you know, as a Ball State grad, it was, you know, I was a little bit like, well, there's a skill set that they're looking for as it relates to, you know, somebody that's entrepreneurial, that's worked in sports, that can manage a pretty broad base of stakeholders. At the end of the day, get money into the collective, which is what I lead, and so I decided to entertain it, and through a series of interviews and conversations, ended up taking the role end of last year in December. And so about 9 months in now, and a lot's evolved even in those 9 months in terms of NIL and college athletics. That's good timing in the sense that got to go to the Final Four. My wife joined me for that, 4 days in Phoenix. Ultimately came up short, but it was a great experience being a part of that as sort of an adopted Boilermaker now.
Sure. So let's go back to Pacers Sports and Entertainment Days. And the reason why I say that is because as we all kind of mature, or at least get older, some of us may be mature, some may not. You look at that first job out of school, and I assume you were in sales. Maybe were you doing season ticket sales or ticket sales in general?
Ticket sales and then suites. And
it's a tough job, right?
Yeah.
And you might look back and say, that just wasn't for me. But whether it was or wasn't, you probably learned. I mean, it shaped a lot of skills for you that are now being used today. Yeah,
I mean, and not only was, you know, is ticket sales hard to begin with wherever you go. Yeah. At that time, to put things in context, we were 2 years removed from the Malice at the Palace. Oh, okay. Reggie had just retired a year earlier. The Colts had just won a Super Bowl, great for the city, but everybody loved the Colts. And, you know, nobody was dropping their season tickets after you win a Super Bowl. And then we had the 08-09 recession. There were rumors that the Simons might move the team. I mean, it was literally, and then we had, not to mention all the off-court drama. You know, that was the era of Jamal Tinsley and some other characters that, you know, just made things difficult when the product on the court wasn't great, and then you're opening the paper and reading about different incidents. And
but other than those issues,
other than those issues, I think we had a ticket sales meeting. I know we had one probably around that time of 2008. Our vice president of ticket sales pulled us all together and said, it was after one of these big, nights out, ended up front page of the Star, and somebody did something they shouldn't have, and he's like, have we hit rock bottom? And I think the only thing we could come up with is that a player had not murdered someone. That sadly, that was what was left. So, while peers of mine in the NBA looked like geniuses at Cleveland because they had LeBron James, it's like that's a little bit of the reality of sports. Like the smartest executives have the best players oftentimes versus like what can you do when you're not dealt a great set of cards. So, but I learned so much in terms of how to sell. You run into a variety of personalities, right? We're in the Midwest. I think most people are relatively friendly, but you get some CEOs that are no nonsense. You got to kind of be short and to the point, and then some that are super fans that love to talk about every player and what they do and that sort of thing. So you did get the chance to interact with a broad array of people. Yeah,
and you already had a love of sports because you played sports in high school and in college as well.
Yeah, I played club soccer at Ball State, nothing crazy for 2 years, and then basketball soccer at Heritage and some club soccer growing up. So I had a bend towards sports, but it was some people that are going to 44 Pacer home games in a year. That's a different level of dedication. I don't know if I could do that just with especially 4 young kids. Making it to 5 games is a lot right now. So
when you moved over to Exact Target, what were you doing for them?
So I got recruited over. I had sold a suite to Exact Target, so they were one of my clients. So I got to meet Scott Dorsey a little bit and a lot of his leadership team at that time, and so they were growing. I mean, I was employee 1,000, so it wasn't like I joined in the first 100 or anything, but they were looking for somebody that had my background to kind of come into marketing and serve as the subject matter expert for sports and entertainment. How do they sell into that vertical? Now, if it was just that, I don't know if I would have had as much interest. But the really fun part of that job was, hey, we also want you to manage our strategic partnerships in sports. So I was going from the team side at the Pacers to now a brand like ET that saw sort of the strategic nature to be a sponsor of Andretti, IndyCar, Colts, Pacers. When I went there in 2011, the Super Bowl was coming to Indy the next year in 2012. I got to be pretty involved in that. Actually got to go to the game on behalf of Exact Target. We had a bunch of clients and prospects in for that. So, I think in 2012, Vince, I went to 8 of the 16 IndyCar races. We had just bought a email service provider in Brazil. And so at the time there was a street race in Sao Paulo, spent a week in Sao Paulo working, bringing customers and new employees from that firm we'd bought out to the race. I mean, it was sort of I was still single, so that was a good time of life to sort of do that and travel on company dime. But we did Sonoma, which is about an hour north of the Bay Area. We did Long Beach, California, St. Pete, Florida, Fort Worth, Texas, Milwaukee, of course, Indy, Toronto. It was a pretty special window of time. So we would try to measure our ROI. So if we're spending, let's say, $250,000 with Andretti, how do we track that ROI? Things like, okay, we brought these prospects or these customers that are up for renewal to this race, and did this influence it? Did it not? Because we could provide a pretty cool VIP experience through the Andretti Chalet and the different things that we had access to. So
So what's the real gain in those situations? Is it the time for relationship building and the face-to-face time?
So we had field sales reps at ET all over the country. So I would generally partner up, as the marketing guy managing this partnership on behalf of executives. I'd work with our field sales reps out in the Bay Area to say, you guys have relationships out here. Who are you prospecting? Who's up for renewal? That's a $1 million plus type renewal, and let's try to give them this experience that you can't just go out and buy a ticket for, right? Yeah. So Sonoma was cool. I did that race 3 years in a row. Mario Andretti actually owns a winery out there, and so the Andretti race team would do a big dinner, I think the Friday night before race weekend. At Mario's winery. So just like, and then race day, you're down in the pits and the garages, and you guys have probably been in some of that out at Indy, but just the experience. Like I grew up here, but I wasn't really a gearhead, and then you kind of get that level of access. You're like, okay, I see why racing's pretty cool. Because growing up here, I didn't grow up in a family where we were like at the race every year per se. So
yeah. So then I guess tell us a little bit about Edge Mentoring.
Yeah. So I will say this, actually later tonight I'm going up to West Lafayette to speak to a group of seniors, undergrad seniors, and I'm a big believer in the power of mentors. And when I graduated and got my first job at the Pacers, I wasn't in the headspace of like, I got to find a mentor. That wasn't like my thinking. I think you just go through life, and as I like to say, if you're out playing in traffic and meeting new people, generally you'll find some chemistry, right, with someone that might be a few years ahead of you, or maybe 20, 30 years ahead of you, who not only do you find them interesting, they mutually kind of have taken an interest in you. And so I think, you're not going to hit home run with everyone you meet, but one of those people for me early in my career was who I mentioned earlier, Jeff Simmons at Elanco. And so I think we met in 08 or 09. And again, what started as I was trying to sell this guy a suite, which did end up happening. Elanco ended up buying a suite. He had started this mentoring group with a group of 5 or 6 guys, all kind of early mid-20s. And Jeff, on his own time, busy CEO, he actually is married with 6 kids of his own, but really believes in leadership development. And so had asked if I would be interested in being a part of this group, that twice a month we would have a Zoom call, Skype back then, and we now call it whole life intergenerational mentoring. So it wasn't just career mentoring. It wasn't a Bible study. There was a faith element to it. It was also a lot of the personal decisions, you're making in your 20s and early 30s. And so, I'm somebody who did grow up going to church, and faith's very important, central tenet of my life, but it wasn't like another just Bible study, right? It was sort of like, okay, here's somebody that's like excelled in the real world. They're not perfect. None of us are, but they really kind of try to make decisions through a similar lens and that sort of thing. So when he invited me in, I said, man, if this guy's willing to take time, I'd probably be smart to say yes. And so just became a couple hours a month, both from Jeff and then the other mentees, the peers in the group, that really filled my cup. I felt like after every call, I was leaving energized. The verse, the name Edge, comes from iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another, Proverbs 27:17. And so I'd been a part of the group for 3 or 4 years, and then we went to Kenya as a group. We went to Haiti in 2011 and 2013, so I had some pretty powerful like vision, mission trip type experiences. And then Jeff came to me in late 13 and said, hey, I think this Edge thing could have legs, but we need a leader. Like he didn't have time to try to spin this up. And so, it was sort of like I said, a startup nonprofit. And I knew the key would be to find other A mentors, because A mentors would attract A mentees. If you were getting C mentors, you're probably not going to get young up and comers that are interested in this. And so we ended up launching about 200 groups during my 5 or 6 years there, from I think 45 states, several countries, because you could be anywhere. Just, we were here, and then we had a annual leadership conference called EdgeX that we did every year, 16, 17, 18, 19. Had folks like Mitch Daniels, Tony Dungy, Tamika Catchings, some authors, Bob Goff, Greg McCune, different people come in and speak. And it was a really rewarding time. We ended up getting a grant from the Lilly Endowment to sort of fund a strategic plan, which is, as a young organization, a cool kind of credibility stamp.
Sure.
Back then the Lilly Endowment only had $14 billion. I think I saw recently this is only 6 years ago. Now they're up to like $90 billion. So, we've got Zepbound and Mounjaro to thank for that. But it's awesome, obviously, what Lilly Company is doing for the endowment, and then what that in turn is doing for the city and the state, and many other organizations outside the state.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And then the endowment you speak of has been very active lately with doling out some worthy cash. Yeah,
they have been. I mean, this is obviously all publicly available, but they have to grant, I believe it's a rolling 3-year average of 5% of their AUM. So, you do the math on 80, 90 billion, 5% of that is a lot of money that you got to strategically, grant every year to important organizations. So,
man, what a great problem that would be to have.
Yeah, right. Purdue benefited. I think earlier this year, Purdue got $100 million. So it's obviously a significant gift. So I don't know what they've done for IU lately, but I'm sure they're doing something.
I would think, yeah. All right, so then you rolled into Prolific. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, that was an interesting opportunity. After going pretty hard for 6 years trying to build this Edge thing, from scratch. And, I had a board and eventually I had 5 or 6 employees, but, it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears just trying to get this thing, to lift off. Was ready just for, quite frankly, something that, I think sometimes in our careers, you want everything to be like a a home run, like, well, I got to go do this, and then I got to go do this. And honestly, I remember thinking at the time, I'm all right if this next thing is like maybe a double or a triple, like it doesn't need to be like this. I think sometimes we get, especially when we're young, we think our careers are just like up and to the right, like this hockey stick. And I've found that at times, like, you might feel like you're plateauing or you're in third gear, but like after like 6 years of that, then there's this like stair step up, right? And in terms of your career. And so, I felt like the opportunity to go be chief revenue officer at Prolific, while it wasn't another startup, let's say, I was okay with that. We had across everything, about 150 employees. It was part of their executive team. It was a newly created role. Somebody, and Brad Benbow and his son Chance, both men that I really respect. I'd gotten to know during my Edge journey. They were one of my larger corporate partners, and they were just launching the Prolific brand as kind of the parent company. So I thought, hey, this is a chance where I can kind of help them build that market awareness and kind of drive some new customer relationships. They didn't have a ton of business yet in Indiana, and so I think we were able to do that over the 4 years I was there. We were headquartered downtown in the BMO Tower, and they're doing great today. And I think Brad was totally understanding when this opportunity came along a year ago that he gets my background in sports and sort of saw how this was a pretty natural fit if you know me at all. And so I'm really grateful because I joined right before COVID. And then, like all of us in 2020, I was kind of like the new guy. I was like, man, am I going to get wheeled? But
right.
No, we ended up, growing a little bit even in 2020, which is a, consulting firm, marketing agency. A lot of times those are the first things to get cut when the pandemic happened. But no, it was a great ride. They've got a great team over there. During that time, I also got hooked up with Providence Crystal Ray, where our paths crossed. And so that's obviously more on the community front, but that's been a huge blessing as well.
Yeah. All right, so you kind of made the segue. Got to ask, when the recruiter called you about this current opportunity, I can make my own assumptions here, but what really kind of excited you about the opportunity and made you decide to take the plunge?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, the strength of the Purdue brand as a whole. I think that to be associated with something like that after what President Daniels built over his decade there, now President Chang. Obviously, I know a lot of great Purdue alums leading businesses across the state, just from different roles I've had. So first and foremost, I think the Purdue brand was okay. This is the Big Ten, which in college athletics, you've got the Power 5 or Power 4 now, but really most of the power is in the two conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. So to be affiliated with a Big Ten school in a space, specifically NIL, that is really cutting edge, and it's not going away. It's going to continue to evolve. And so part of my calculus was to get into this while it's still relatively young and become an expert. And along the way, I'm going to meet, a lot of great alums that care a lot about Purdue athletics. And that's kind of how my career's gone. I don't really have like this brilliant 30 or 40 year plan mapped out ahead of time, but it's sort of, I kind of think about it in 3 year probably windows of time. And sometimes opportunities come along, and somebody once told me to use a sailing analogy, you just got to take what the wind gives you. And so I think this was one where the opportunity to be associated with the Purdue brand, to learn a space that's brand new and evolving. And as I thought about just I think there's 600,000 living alum from Purdue. So that's a lot of people, not just here in Indiana, that I'd have the chance to kind of get to know, build relationships with, see how they might fit into what we're trying to do at the collective.
So if each of those 600,000 just donates $100 a year to the Boilermaker Alliance, I mean, good to go.
Don't give them any ideas, man. Come
easier
on.
said than done. I've definitely talked about that in a few other settings, and that would go a long way if we could just get,
or hell, even $20.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, that's a question I had. So you kind of mentioned it as I'm jumping into something that's somewhat in its infancy, that's evolving. There are a lot of people that can jump into an industry that's well established. Things may move really quickly, but because there's a strong foundation, it doesn't seem that challenging in terms of keeping up. I got to imagine the NIL world it's just the evolution of it from a year ago to today.
Yeah,
it seems like a decade.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
how do you keep up with that, and how are you just constantly trying to learn and really kind of keep in line with regulations and things like that are coming around?
Yeah. So I mean, if you kind of start with my base, I've got a board because I'm not a Purdue employee, right? I'm separate from Purdue. The collective legally has to be separate in order to compensate the student athletes. So I've got my own board, which none of them knew what this was a couple years ago either. They just sort of raised their hands and care a lot about Purdue. So they agreed to get involved and help. And then I've obviously got my peers over in athletics. So our AD, Mike Babinski, and his team. So, they've got insights I don't have. Where I've found kind of a lot of insight is talking to people in my seat at other schools. We mentioned IU earlier. There's a few other Big Ten, ACC, SEC type schools that I've gotten connected to, and we don't all do things exactly the same, right? But we're all kind of figuring this out on the fly. And one idea that I sort of stole from IU to give you guys a little bit of love is you guys came out with this Hoosiers Connect vodka, earlier this year, I think with Starlight Distillery, Huber's Orchard down in Southern Indiana. So Tyler Harris, who runs Hoosiers for Good, Hoosiers Connect, was telling me about it, and I said, well, I know the guys at West Fork Whiskey, and bourbon's cooler than vodka, right? So I was like, let me hit up Blake Jones at West Fork, and this was probably February of this year, and within 90 days we had created this. I should have brought a bottle, but this Alliance bourbon that we were going to make kind of an evergreen product, same concept. 25% of proceeds go to the collective, but we ended up kind of creating a pretty cool label that's more of a collector's item all around the Final Four. Okay. So it kind of had the bracket and some cactus, and we had to be careful not to trip any IP or anything with the NCAA. Right. But that's an idea of like everyone's kind of stealing good ideas if you have one. And learning from peers, and there's some great resources, D1 Ticker, NIL Newsstand, some like daily digest, because like right now, I mean, there are new articles daily, not just like, oh yeah, I heard about that 3 weeks ago. It's like, oh no, somebody else came out with a statement from, this school. So it's, you are trying to kind of stay on the cutting edge, and there's been a couple different injunctions from the courts since I took this role, like where boosters or collectives could be involved or not be involved. Now we're pretty conservative at Purdue. We do everything, with a high degree of integrity and excellence. So I'm not out meeting with recruits. In theory, collectives could be right now. Last thing I need to get is entangled and be blamed that we lost a recruit. So right. I'll leave that to the coaches to handle. But yeah, there really is no enforcement. The NCAA's come out publicly and said right now there's no enforcement happening around NIL as they kind of get this sorted out through the courts.
So I would consider myself a novice NIL knowledge base, or have a novice knowledge base of NIL. I don't know how knowledgeable our viewers and listeners are, but if you would, just in a basic form, what is NIL?
Yeah.
And then what is the Boilermaker Alliance?
For sure. So NIL is short for name, image, and likeness. That is how you say it, NIL. Some people will be like, how's NIL going? And that's when I know they don't know what they're talking about, but it's okay. So it is NIL. And so if you go back, obviously the NCAA has really endorsed amateurism, right, for decades now for college athletics, key part of our society, our fabric. But there was a court case going back about 10 years. Ed O'Bannon from NCAA, was a basketball player that, was sort of like, hey, these schools are using or in his case, UCLA is using my likeness for video games and to sell jerseys and all, and I don't see any of that money. Yeah, I got my scholarship. It's great. And I think as coaches' salaries were starting to become, high 7-figure, even 8-figure type dollar figures, that people have this realization. I think student athletes too began to feel a little bit more empowered to say, wow, this is an economic machine. A lot of other people are making money. I get my degree, which is great, but maybe I should get some slice of the pie, right? So what ended up happening was in July 1st of 2021, won't give you all the background in terms of the courts, but NIL legislation was passed by the NCAA to say that players can now monetize their name, image, and likeness, essentially make money off of their personal brand. Okay, that was about 3 years ago. From that point to where we are today, I think a few things have happened. I don't think NIL and the transfer portal were ever meant to be attached at the hip, but now that student athletes can transfer really every semester, you can more or less transfer now. Which even when I took the job in December, guys, the rules back then were you could transfer once as an undergrad, once as a grad student. Now there's no restrictions on how many times.
And you had to sit out potentially.
Yeah. So now you have this sort of, Wild Wild West transfer portal. And then what, again, I think at times, people would call true NIL where, hey, make this up, but Zach Eady, Cafe Patachu reaches out to Zach Eady and says, we'll pay you, $200 if you want to come by and sign autographs for an hour. And Zach may say, well, I'll do it for $400. And it's like, okay, we'll do that. That was kind of, and that still exists, right? There's a lot of that happening with college student athletes where it's more of just a marketplace, and student athlete gets contacted, and you see this a lot. I think the women, female student athletes are really good at this. We've got some volleyball players that have done a fantastic job leveraging their true NIL. I think I moderated a panel with sophomore volleyball player Chloe Chacoin. She was the top performing female student athlete on what's called the NIL store. So the NIL store is an actual store where you can buy jerseys and shirts with players' last names or their faces, or Zach Eady had a Big Maple shirt. He's from Canada, right? And so they get a cut of everything that's sold. None of that goes into the collective, but they get a cut of everything sold. And so she's done deals, with a nail salon, or just giving an example where they're going to post on their social media, their Instagram, about this salon, and maybe get in kind, hey, come get your nails done whenever you want, or it's $1,000 if you do 3 posts, that sort of stuff. Where collective sort of entered the picture, what I lead now, this probably wasn't immediate 3 years ago, but within, I'd say, 6 months, schools started to figure out, and alumni started to figure out, how do we compete in this new era to attract and retain talent, right? Athletes to our institution. And so collectives, I don't know what the first collective was, but the Boilermaker Alliance got launched by a group of business leaders, primarily from Central Indiana, out of the Boiler Business Exchange, and I think it was May of 22, so long before I was involved. And they had just met with the athletic director, Mike Babinski, say, how can we help, right? And I think a lot of colleges were figuring out, do we even want to have a collective? Like this is new, but it feels like if we're going to be competitive, we're going to have to go out.
Other schools do, we don't.
Yeah, we can't just rely on true NIL, which is obviously great for the student athletes. And so collectives started to emerge, which really is just a group of boosters or alumni for a particular school that have gotten together. Many of the collectives were able to kind of come up with this creative way to become a 501c3, where it's not pay to play, but the student athletes that do receive NIL money from the collective have to be out in the community X amount of times a month, which we do at Purdue, and then they also have to promote certain charities X amount of times per month as part of their contract. And so many collectives became 501c3s, were granted that designation from the IRS, and then some collectives also launched a for-profit arm. So we also have a for-profit. We actually have 2 entities. I think most people probably just think of us as a C3, but we also have a for-profit entity for any like corporate deals that we may engage in. But a lot of it out of the gate has been donor-driven, so they get a tax write-off for it. Much like we're separate again from Purdue, but much like you give to the John Purdue Club, which is the internal athletics fundraising. Which with that you actually get points, which I'm sure you guys know points matter a lot in these college athletic fundraising models, where your ticket, your seating location, where do you park, your access to Final Four tickets when that happens. Hopefully that happens for IU sometime soon.
Maybe.
We'll see. But yeah, so it's evolved now. Collectives, you guys probably saw how State's ADs basically came out and said in July that they have $20 million in their collective just for football, which is sort of mind-boggling. I mean, there is no publicly available database, so a lot of the numbers you do hear in the media are exaggerated, or you hear about somebody's valuation. X so-and-so quarterback's valued at $3 million. Well, that doesn't mean they're actually getting paid $3 million. They may be making half of that or a quarter of that. That's just their valuation. So, unless you're in my seat where I actually sign the contracts and know what we're paying, the student athletes at Purdue, or you're in a similar seat at another school, there is no database out there that, we don't have collective bargaining, right, in college athletics. So, but it's moving quickly, and there's this House versus the NCAA settlement out there that's still moving its way through, and there's a lot that's up in the air about what this looks like a year from now with the potential of revenue sharing. But, in the short term, we've got to continue to raise and make sure we've got obligations certainly through at least the next 24-25 school year with the various sports that we support. But I'm having a ton of fun. I mean, it's a lot of work. There are a lot of bases to cover, not just like my board and donors, but these universities are pretty matrixed organizations, so you've got to work with a number of different groups.
Yeah, very very intriguing to me. But just real quick, I remember thinking back when my days in college. As an 18 to 22-year-old, not getting paid anything, and what some of these kids.
What sport did you play?
None. I get it. Intramurals,
kickball.
I was good on
lot
that
ball
field.
King of lot ball.
Yeah, right. But man, can you imagine making like $50K as a college student?
I mean, I was a waiter in my fraternity house, and I made $160 a month, and thought I was rich. I mean, granted, when you went to Kilroy's, like a Miller Lite was like $1 a bottle, so you could go a long way.
Yeah.
Well, it's something that we've been. This is sort of a more recent development, but to that point, Purdue obviously prides itself on being a elite academic institution, and so there's a young man I got to know a few months ago, former Purdue football student athlete. He's now getting his master's, so he's done playing, but he actually got together with two of his Daniel School or business school professors to create a financial acumen course. And so this
you're answering one of my other questions.
Yeah, so this is actually, I think, brilliant and much needed because it's going to be everything from personal finance to taxes. Like these guys are men and women are 1099 employees of the collective, so we're not withholding taxes, right? Investing, saving, it's 9 different courses that they've created, and they actually have created this curriculum to where we are starting to roll it out. I think last week they met with our women's basketball team, and we're going to start to roll it out to the plan is eventually all varsity sports, and we think this should be really a great tool when we're recruiting student athletes, when your coaches are talking to parents, be like, hey, we have this program in place, fits with the Purdue brand. It's about much more than just winning on the field. It's, how are we preparing them for life? The reality is 99% of these, even guys and gals that are getting money from the collective will not go on to the next level, right? They're going to go get a job. And so some of the, depending on, the sport they're playing, I mean, it could be a meaningful amount that if they're smart with it, with the power of compound interest in time, that it could really set them up. And so we also feel like not only could it be a great recruiting tool, but I feel like it should instill a lot of confidence with our donors that, hey, we're trying to educate and equip. And so that's been a bit of a partnership. We've been involved in those conversations as well as the athletic department to say, how do we kind of best support, right now the student athletes who are getting NIL money, but we want to really roll it out to any student athlete, whether you're getting NIL or not.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense.
I have a sort of a technical question. So the NIL Purdue Alliance is a 501c3. If you allocate money to a student athlete, is their obligation in the community to represent other 501c3s, or is it just based on a per sort of individual circumstance of who they're brokered to represent?
Yeah, so we I'd say predominantly, they're in the community when they're on contract with BA, with Boilermaker Alliance. They're going to, for example, the Boys and Girls Club, right, and in Lafayette, and serving there for an hour or 2 hours, and there's always like a specific role, right, interacting with the kids. They're going to Miami Elementary and reading books to students. There could be, though, examples where they're doing that for a business, right, and that would be through our other entity, Boiler Up, which is not a public-facing entity, but that's why we have that set aside to say if we were to go out and get, making this up, 100,000 from Salesforce, that would go into Boiler Up, and that would be more of like a true commercial type endorsement.
Yeah.
They can obviously, Salesforce could also go direct, right? They don't need to necessarily go through us, but that's something that we're kind of actively exploring is what's the appetite for, corporate engagement with the collective, because obviously you have like your Learfields, right? Learfield's at a ton of college campuses. They do the traditional, we have Learfield at Purdue. They do the traditional sponsorship sales, right, for Ross-Ade and Mackey and all the different, venues there. And so we have a bit of a partnership now with Learfield as well. So there's a lot of, parties involved in terms of how we think about not just, the donor side of where revenue is, but what could we be doing on the corporate side. And then we have our membership model, which to your point, you joked, but the beginning level is $25 a month. And then we have a couple higher levels, and you get some exclusive content and some other perks through that, some invitation to a few events here and there. But, that's something that if we could just get that distributed and again, continue to demystify how this works, educate people on what NIL is. If we could get 1% of our alums to give $25 a month or $100 a month, like that obviously would become a significant revenue stream, recurring revenue stream.
For sure.
Now, are any of the funds that are given to the collective restricted, or does the collective have 100% discretion of how to allocate those?
Yeah, so the way I would answer that is, last week I did an event with our football coach over at Country Club here in town, and that was our football coach, and the room was 130 people that was there for football, right? That's what we were talking about. So any funds collected that night or as a result of that event, we would earmark, for football, right? There are folks that if it's not tied to an event or whatever that we're just out, getting introduced to or cultivating with, where they may say, hey, use it where you need it most. Obviously, we have a little bit of OpEx. It's myself and 2 other staff and some hard costs, but we run pretty lean, right? So most of the lion's share of what we're raising is going back out, to compensate student athletes.
So then part B of that question is, you kind of touched on this briefly earlier about, not wanting to go out and see recruits and get involved in that, because I can only imagine the mess that could create. But to the extent that you can speak on it, where does the collective come in to the recruiting process?
Yeah.
And how does that work between what you guys do and the coaches of a respective program saying, here's our recruit we're targeting, here's what we think we need, and the back and forth there?
So we really don't get involved till after the student athletes committed to Purdue. And really what the coaches could say when I first got the role, it's changed a bit. They used to be able to speak in generalities, right? Or potential earnings. Like, hey, if you come here, we've got, let's use football. We've got another wide receiver who, this is what his NIL package looks like, and we would imagine you in a similar package, right? It'd be sort of, that sort of language. Now, with this injunction that I think it was February or March with Virginia and Tennessee, you can be specific when you're out recruiting a student athlete to say, hey, we want to offer you a full ride. We also want to offer you $5,000 a month. Again, this is on the coach's side. They couldn't do that in the past. And so, what we try to do is we try to have a number that, depending on the sport, hey, manage to this, right?
You're kind of giving them a budget to play with.
Yeah, more or less, right? Yeah. And then it's sort of a collaboration from there, especially like when there's a transfer portal and there's potentially somebody that might want to hop in for whatever reason. We might have some dialogue back and forth on, is there any wiggle room here or is there not? But yes, we're involved kind of on the back end. We're not out. I do get calls from agents sometimes and even parents at times that might have questions on language in our contract. We don't really deviate from that. It's a pretty straightforward contract. Like, you're going to get paid this money regardless of whether you get injured or your playing time diminishes. Really, the only time we'd revoke it is if you get expelled from school or you get a DUI, something of that nature. So
there's, on speaking of the transfer portal, which right, wrong, or indifferent can somewhat be compared to free agency. How do you answer the critics that have said, okay, between transfer portal, which is not your world, but is just essentially aligned with it in a sense, and NIL, I don't like what college sports has become. How do you address that?
Yeah, I think something I try to just, again, part of the education process is, not all of these, I try to call them students or student athletes, not just kids. They, our football coach likes to joke, like, they look like grown men, but they're really just kids and like grown men bodies, right? These are 18 to 22-year-olds. But, and a lot of our, obviously many of our student athletes don't come from affluence, right? Or families that are well off or even super well off. And so I think what a lot of people forget is that, yes, a full ride is great, right? That's changed, probably hundreds of thousands of lives, right? Over how many years we've had scholarships in place. But many of our student athletes who maybe don't come from a lot of economic means are taking some or all of their NIL money, sending it home so that their parents can come, buy a plane ticket, get a hotel room, pay for parking. All these things add up that prior, that would have been very restrictive for them to do. And so, I get it that there's some purists out there that had a meeting this morning with one that, just doesn't like it, right? And that's fine. I think our board chair at Purdue said it well. He said, we can have world-class facilities at Purdue, coaches, support staff, scholarships. If we don't have a robust collective, we are going to struggle to be competitive. And our approach is we're probably never at Purdue going to be the top spender, in any sport. But if we can get in the conversation, I think we have a lot to sell on. It's a premier academic institution. Relationships and culture still matter for the respective coaches and their teams and their staff. You're going to get a great education. You're going to be set up. West Lafayette, sort of sells itself. So, there's a lot of other things beyond just, well, what am I going to get paid to come here? And I think people forget that does still matter. It's not just, whatever the dollar figure might be. So.
Yeah. Well, any purist can say they don't like what something has become, but they can't deny that athletics, college level, obviously into the pros, it's a revenue machine.
Yeah.
If it weren't, you wouldn't have the Big Ten with 35 members now and so on. And all of this conference realignment and the TV money that comes along with that. Have you been able to draw any sort of, or been able to quantify the correlation between if we can use collective dollars to help the revenue producing sports be more successful and therefore grow the revenue of the school, of the athletic department of Purdue or whatever school, how that can trickle down to the non-revenue producing sports? Yeah. Because there's got to be a positive impact there.
Yeah, there absolutely is. I can't say that I've got, specific data, but you're right in that the only two profitable sports, and this is the case at most, Power 4 schools, there's some that there might be a third sport that's profitable, but most of the time it's football and men's basketball. And football is the lion's share, right? Football is 75%.
Well, not at Purdue, not you. We unfortunately are the inverse.
Well, you would think so based on the brand of the sport, but believe it or not, the revenue, I can't speak for IU because I don't know, but I know at Purdue, football is every bit, I believe, of 3/4 or more. And I have those figures exactly correct. But it's a lot of it has to do with the TV deal, right, in the Big Ten. Not just the sponsorships and the ticket sales. And so, without those two sports, every other sport operates at a loss, right? And so you're right in terms of your logic of hey, like if we can continue to grow these sports and the TV deals, which seem to be, if you think about it, sports are one of the few things that seem to be recession-proof. There's a high barrier to entry. We're not launching new schools or major sports programs, so these it's hard to get into, and so it seems like there's just this increasing TV rights money that happens every 5-7 years, however often those deals are getting kind of re-upped. And so even just looking on I know the pro level's different, but I think I saw the latest NBA deals like $76 billion over however many years, and there was the whole kerfuffle about TNT getting squeezed out by Amazon, and there's like 3 different TV rights players in the mix. But yeah, it's those two sports I think raise the tide for every other sport at Purdue, and we're I guess you could say somewhat fortunate in that we have 18 varsity sports, which for a Big Ten school certainly isn't at the top. I think Ohio State has 35, and so I think we're well positioned. I say I think Purdue's well positioned in this new era of we don't have to figure out they don't have to figure out how to fund 35 varsity sports in this sort of new potential era of revenue sharing, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to watch how it all unfolds. But
it's change, and how do you adapt to that change? For me, I look at the coaches and think, oh my God, your job is pretty hard as it is to coach the team, to recruit kids out of high school, but now you're basically re-recruiting your team every year, and that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself. That would get old really fast, I think.
Yeah, you've got a month. I think the transfer portal for football, for example, opens December 9th and closes January 7th this year. And so, I took this role right in the middle of the transfer portal last December. And I don't know how Ryan Walters and sort of our football staff sleeps at night, because a kid can give you his word that he's coming back, and then he goes home for Christmas break. He gets around his buddies and high school friends and family, and it's like, oh, you need to, they're not paying you enough, or whatever it is. And so it can be incredibly anxiety inducing when you're just trying to retain folks, right? And so I think it's there'll continue to be some evolution. They're already talking about potentially eliminating the spring transfer portal window. Now it's only a 2-week window for football, but it'll be interesting to see if that happens. Men's basketball really has one at the end of the season, so kind of mid-March or whenever your season's up to beginning of May. But it's interesting times.
So it's a very entrepreneurial role, which I think probably also attracted you to it. Things are constantly changing, but it gives you a lot of flexibility to some extent and creativity on how you can make this thing work. What would you say your biggest challenges are right now?
Yeah, I think part of it is just how we get the word out, right? Like we're building this thing on the fly. We don't have we weren't gifted a database of 100,000 Purdue emails, right? And so, I work very closely. We are the exclusive collective of Purdue Athletics. So, weekly I'm in the John Purdue Club major gift meetings up in West Lafayette. And so, trying to build trust even with just the staff of JPC to say, hey, let's not have a scarcity mindset here. Let's have an abundance mindset to say sometimes, maybe early on I've certainly taken more from them because they know the Purdue athletic donor base than I do. I think there's been some instances where we've been able to identify some capacity from potential donors who don't live in Indiana, so they're not active JPC members, but they care a ton about Purdue, and so if they're in Atlanta or California, they're like, this is one way I can give back and feel like my dollars are making a difference. But they don't necessarily care as much about the points because they don't live nearby, they don't have season tickets or that sort of thing.
How many other, call it non-officially affiliated collectives are out there, and do you find that how do you avoid competing with them?
Yeah, at Purdue, there might be one other that we had to have some conversations with because they sort of sprung up to support a particular sport, and then but it gets complicated because we're a sponsor of Learfield, and so we get rights to the Motion P and some of the marks that come with, and so if you don't have that, there's not a lot you can do, in terms of marketing on behalf, or in partnership with Purdue Athletics. And so, we've done a good job at Purdue of, like I said, there might be one, I don't even know if it's still active, whereas I know some other schools, Michigan at one point had 5 collectives. And so generally they would start up like, hey, this one's the football one, this one's the basketball one, this one's the women's basketball one. But what ends up happening is there's donor turf wars, and ultimately, a lot of this comes down to trust and alignment. And so if the athletic department can't trust you, or you're saying, oh, we raised $1 million when really you raised 500,000, and the other 500,000 didn't come through, but yet they're out making commitments. That's happened at other schools, right? It's a mess. Fortunately, that's not how we're operating at Purdue. So
that's wild. So I know this is an impossible question to answer, but how do you see NIL evolving, or what's in your crystal ball? What's the future of NIL possibly look like? They've
got to get this House versus NCAA settlement figured out, right? We're kind of in the middle of it right now. We should know more in the next couple weeks on whether there's potentially approval or not. I do think at some point, revenue sharing should happen, which means the school could start directly paying student athletes. The role of collectives in that future kind of remains to be seen. There's people out there that think that football and basketball could spin off and become their own things essentially, right? I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen or not, or are certain conferences going to just kind of break away and say we're going to do our own league separate from the NCAA. But I would just say I don't know where we're at in the process. I don't think we're in the beginning, but I definitely don't think we're at the end. So we're probably somewhere in the middle in terms of this is. I doubt this is all resolved in a year. I think it will continue to evolve probably over the next 3 to 5 years, which I know probably is not what some people want to hear, but that's my personal take of where all this is headed. I think Charlie Baker at the NCAA is doing the best job he can, but he inherited a pretty tough situation, and who knows, right? There's obviously a presidential election here in a couple months. I think once we get past that, maybe Congress will want to get involved. They really haven't yet in a meaningful way, and so I don't know. There's a lot of different paths that this thing could take. So I by no means have a strong crystal ball in terms of what it's going to look like 3 years from now.
Yeah,
so,
that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, best of luck. Other
Thank
than
you.
the times when Purdue and IU meet up.
Yeah. Oak and Bucket here in a couple months.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I just hope it's a meaningful game.
Yeah.
Not like who's going to finish 16th in the Big Ten.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're at
18th
your
or
guys'
whatever
place
right now.
this year. So
We are, yeah. Well, you're welcome to our tailgate anytime.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
All right. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate you dropping some NIL knowledge on us and learning about your past and the various sports-minded but entrepreneurial ways that you've gone. And best of luck with Boilermaker Alliance.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, guys.
You're welcome. Thank all you guys, too, for joining us on this episode of the Industrious Podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope you learned something new today. If not, if you have any more questions, drop it in the comments. We'll be happy to pass those along and see what we can find out for you. Until then, don't forget, guys, be industrious.